Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Resonant Blade devlog episode. And if you are new here to the channel, this video series is about my solo indie game dev project, Resonant Blade, a 2D sci-fi action-adventure game inspired by Zelda and Hyper Light Drifter, where you play as Atlas and fight against the dark synths, harnessing the sonic power of the Resonant Blade. A few weeks ago, I put out a new trailer for the game, so go check that out if you haven't already, and also you can go wishlist.
Also, you can wishlist the game on the Steam, because the game is on the Steam page.
You can also wishlist the game on Steam right now, which I highly recommend. So, since the last update, I've mainly been figuring out how to make a snake game. Like the old classic arcade snake games. Well, actually, a snake boss. And in order to do this, I had to embark on an epic quest of mythic proportions to unveil secrets of the snake. And just like that, I had a moving snake. This works by having the head of the snake essentially leaving a trail of breadcrumbs behind for the next segment to follow by updating that segment's position to the next breadcrumb waypoint. I also made sure to load in different sprites for the head, body segments, and tail depending on the direction that they're moving. Alright, I got that working. Now, I needed to make the snake do more than just move around. So why not have it move around underground? Sure, why not? To do this, I stored the properties for each segment, i.e. HP and resonance, in a separate class, and then I destroy the segment game objects when colliding with the burrowing waypoint. After that, I recreate the segments at a random position and load back in their properties. I added in some collision for each segment so that you can actually damage them. On the other hand, getting hit by the snake will knock you to the ground for a short duration. Alright, snake's getting better, but still needs a lot of help. It's time to bring out the big guns. Well, these energy projectiles will have to do. When the snake is in its default moving state, it'll have a random chance to shoot out some projectiles from each segment. These can be parried and absorbed into the Resonant Blade to build up your triad attacks. The snake can shoot things now. Let's add in some more things for it to shoot. What's something that a snake can actually throw? Nothing. Trick question. It has no arms. But it can spit poison at you. These poison balls are the same projectiles that these little slime enemies throw at you, and like them, they'll also blind your sensors so that you won't be able to see or hear any resonant frequencies for a short time. The snake can only enter this spit turret mode from burrowing. When it surfaces, the camera will center in on the snake as it opens its jaws and fires out volleys of poison at Atlas. Okay, the snake is mildly dangerous now. Let's crank up the danger and add in a snake bite.
Perhaps you'd like to see how snake-like I can be.
Coming from a burrowing state, the snake will follow Atlas and pause briefly before launching out of the ground with its jaws wide open, trying to bite Atlas. I still need to play around with the timing of things and make the burrowing effect look better, but this bite attack is going to do tons of damage, so the best thing for you to do is just dash out of the way. Seems easy enough, but this might be a little tougher with some mobs to deal with. Yep, that's right, I threw in some mini snake worms that this boss can spawn. I made a little surfacing animation for them so that when they spawn, they'll pop out of the ground. As for the functionality of these enemies, they don't do much at the moment except for chase you around, but I might give them one attack. Maybe a projectile, spit poison, energy ball, laser. Let me know in the comment section down below what kind of attack you think these guys should have. I also came up with the basic design for how the boss fight is going to progress. I won't go into too much of the details, but the gist of it is that you'll need to find a way to stun the snake to make its head vulnerable to attacks. Okay, that's most of what I've done with the snake boss so far. The next thing to do is spend some time getting all of these states to gel with one another so that it makes fighting this boss a fun and challenging experience. I sketched up the map for the snake boss fight in GIMP. This fight takes place in the jungle area of the world. The arena here is bigger than other boss levels, allowing the player plenty of movement around the snake as it weaves and burrows around. Located at the top of the map are two switches that will activate an earthquake generator device, which will force the snake out from hiding and stun it. The resonant orbs required to activate the quake generator will only appear while the snake is in its burrowing state. Basically, the player will have limited time to figure out the two colors for the switches before the snake launches a devastating attack. Figuring out the two resonances for the switches can be done in two ways. You can guess, which isn't recommended since you'll have access to 4 resonant crystals at this point in the game, which would make 16 different combinations to try out. The second and preferred method is to use Otto's long-range scan. This ability allows Atlas to remotely control his droid companion Otto and scan previously unreachable areas. The idea for the Quake Generator is that you can move Otto to the resonant sources of the switches and scan them. This will reveal the resonance required to activate the Quake Generator. Adding in the remote control support for Otto wasn't too difficult. I already had some functions that would disable or pause the control of Atlas for other reasons. I also had to do some simple things like making sure that the camera follows Otto instead of Atlas, and then come up with a simple way to move Otto around. Since you won't be doing any fighting or fancy movement with Otto, I just mapped the horizontal and vertical axes directly onto Otto's 2D rigid body velocity. There's no acceleration or deceleration or anything like that, it's just plain old simple movement. After that, I had to make sure that the scanner function actually originated from Otto. Moving the visuals for this wasn't too bad, but getting the other game objects like enemies and switches to interact with Otto scanner was a little trickier to figure out. Instead of having the player scanner script attached to the player, I ended up making a separate object just for the scanner. I could then just switch the parent for this object and local position to either Atlas or Otto, depending on which one you're in control of. So for some of the puzzle design and mechanics, I ended up making these pedestal things that can hold these orb things.
These spikes do 60 damage, so if he takes more than one hit...
Wait, how are you getting out of here?
The orbs can be picked up and moved around. The function of the pedestals is to change the resonance of an orb. After throwing an orb onto a pedestal, you can thrust the resonant blade into the pedestal and power up the orb to change its resonance. To do this, you could select any resonance and rapid fire press a button until this little energy meter maxes out. This will trigger a little animation and update the color of the orb. These orbs can then be placed into these floor switches to unlock things or power up devices like the previously mentioned Quake Generator. I finally went
Relax. Just relax. Can you find your balls?
I finally went back and updated the Sonic Slam Triad ability. I updated the visuals and made Atlas jump in the air a little higher. Before, there was a ring particle effect that expanded outward from the player. Now, it's more like an expanding rectangle of highlighted boxes and ground spikes and debris that reach to the edge of the screen. I made the damage reduce the further out that it goes. Instead of a circle collider object that grows in scale and collides with enemies, I just attached a box collider to each rectangle object that gets created. With the knockback effect, you can even hit enemies multiple times as they keep getting launched into the next damage zone. Making Atlas jump even higher and adding subtle things like darkening the background really helped make this triad ability more intense. Using this move is another strategy for getting past the snake boss's defenses. And one last thing that I've been working on is just a small visual upgrade to the font for the damage numbers that pop up when getting hit or hitting an enemy. Before, I was using Unity's text objects, so the numbers weren't exactly the same pixel ratio as the rest of the stuff on the screen. I just made some individual sprites for the numbers instead of using the text objects. I went with a wider font because I think it looks more sci-fi futuristic, I guess. Things like this are probably unnecessary in the grand scheme of things, like finishing the game, but it helps keep me motivated and more productive when I go back to other aspects of game dev.
Tight, yeah!
Okie dokie, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Resonant Blade updates. More importantly, if you want to support what I'm doing here, make sure to go over to Steam and wishlist the game right now. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.